The Galactic Council had ruled the known universe for 12,000 years. They were old, powerful, and certain of their own greatness. 17 species made up the Council, and together they controlled trade, war, and peace across 1,000,000 star systems. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched young species crawl out of their homeworlds and reach for the stars, and always without fail. Those species had bowed to the Council. That was simply how things worked. When their long-range sensors detected a new species emerging from a small yellow star on the edge of the galaxy, the Council followed their standard procedure. They had done this 47 times before. They would do it again. Ambassador Velkorath of the Sindari Collective was chosen for the mission. He was tall, thin, and covered in silver scales that caught the light when he moved. His people were known for their patience and their skill in negotiation. He had brought 19 species into the Council's fold during his long career. This would be his 20th. His ship traveled for 3 months through the dark spaces between stars. When it finally arrived in the system the natives called Sol, Velkorath felt a small thrill of excitement. The planet below was blue and green, wrapped in white clouds. It reminded him of his own homeworld, long ago. Before the great machines had changed everything, he broadcast the universal peace signal and waited. The response came within hours. A fleet of ships rose from the planet and the nearby moon. They were small and crude by Council standards, but there were many of them. Velkorath counted over 300, vessels forming a defensive line between his ship and the blue planet. Admiral Daniel Brooks commanded the United Earth Defense Fleet from the bridge of his flagship. He was 52 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much war. Humanity had spent the last century pulling itself back from the edge of destruction. The climate wars had killed billions. The unification conflicts that followed had killed millions more. But they had survived. They had rebuilt. And now, for the first time, they faced something from beyond their world. Brooks studied the alien vessel on his screen. It was beautiful in a strange way, all curves and flowing lines, like something grown rather than built. But beauty did not mean safety. He had learned that lesson many times. "Open a channel," he ordered. The first meeting took place aboard a neutral vessel provided by the Council. It floated in the empty space between Earth's moon and Mars, far from any weapons or defenses. Velkorath arrived with 2 assistants and a translation device that converted his words into sounds. The humans could understand. Admiral Brooks brought Commander Laura Kim with him. She was younger than Brooks, sharp and quick, with black hair tied back and a face that gave nothing away. She had studied every scrap of information they had gathered about the alien transmission. She did not trust any of it. Velkorath began with a speech about the glory of the Galactic Council. He spoke of peace and prosperity, of trade routes that spanned the galaxy, of technologies that could extend life and end disease. He painted a picture of a universe united under wise and benevolent leadership. Then he presented the standard. Integration Treaty. Laura Kim took the document and read it carefully. The translation device had converted it into English, and she went through every line, every clause, every condition. As she read, her face grew colder. The treaty demanded that humanity surrender 60% of their solar system's resources to the Council. It required all military vessels to be inspected and approved by Council representatives. It called for a permanent monitoring station to be built on Earth, staffed by Council species, with full authority to observe and report on human activities. In exchange, humanity would receive access to galactic trade networks and protection from external threats. Kim looked up from the document. "This is not diplomacy," she said. Her voice was flat and hard. "This is subjugation dressed in polite language." Velkorath blinked his large silver eyes. He had heard many reactions to the treaty over the centuries. Gratitude was most common. Confusion was not unusual. But this cold rejection was something new. "Perhaps you do not understand," he said carefully. "The Council offers you a place among the stars. We offer you protection, knowledge, advancement. All we ask in return is cooperation. You ask for control," Brooks said. He had remained silent until now, watching, measuring. "You want our resources?" You want to disarm us? You want to watch our every move? That is not cooperation. That is conquest without firing a shot. Velkorath spread his thin hands in a gesture his people used to show peaceful intentions. Every species that has joined the council has accepted these terms. They have all prospered. In 12,000 years, not one has regretted their decision. Then we will be the first to refuse, Kim said. The words hung in the recycled air of the meeting room. Velkorath stared at the two humans, searching for some sign that they were joking or testing him. He found nothing but cold determination. Cannot refuse, he said slowly. The council does not accept refusal. If you do not join willingly, there will be consequences. Admiral Brooks stood up. He was not a tall man, but in that moment, he seemed to fill the room. We crawled out of the ashes of our own destruction, he said. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly ended us. We rebuilt our world with our own hands. We did not do all of that just to hand everything over to strangers who show up and demand tribute. This is a mistake, Velkorath said. A terrible mistake. The Council has resources you cannot imagine. Fleets that could darken your skies. You are one small species on one small world. You cannot stand against the galaxy. Laura Kim smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We have been standing against impossible odds since before your council existed. It is what we do. The meeting ended. Velkorath returned to his ship and began the long journey back to council space. He spent the entire trip composing his report, trying to find words that would explain what had happened. In all his years of service, he had never failed to secure a treaty. Now, for the first time, he was returning empty-handed. Back on Earth, Admiral Brooks stood before the United Earths Assembly and delivered his report. The representatives listened in silence as he described the alien ambassador, the treaty, and humanity's rejection. They will come back, Brooks said. They will send more ships, more ambassadors, more demands. And eventually, they will send weapons. We need to be ready. The Assembly voted unanimously to begin emergency military expansion. Factories that had been building consumer goods switched to producing warships. Mining operations in the asteroid belt doubled their output. Scientists who had been working on civilian projects were reassigned to weapons development. Humanity had spent a century learning how to survive. Now they would learn how to fight, and somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, Elgorath's ship carried news that would shake the foundations of the Galactic Council. A new species had emerged. A species that said no. The galaxy would never be the same. The council chamber was the largest structure in the known galaxy. It floated in the heart of a dying star system, powered by the fading energy of an ancient sun. 17 platforms rose from the central floor, each one home to the representative of an elder species. For 12,000 years, decisions made in this room had shaped the fate of billions. Now, for the first time in living memory, the chamber was filled with confusion. High Chancellor Marathian stood at the center of the room. He was ancient even by council standards, his body more machine than flesh, his mind preserved through technologies that younger species could not understand. He had guided the council through 3 major wars and countless smaller conflicts. He had never faced a situation like this. Ambassador Velkorath's report is clear, he said, his voice amplified to reach every corner of the vast chamber. The humans have rejected the Standard Integration Treaty. They have refused to join the Council. Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives. Such a thing had not happened in over 8,000 years. The last species to refuse integration had been the Kelthari, and they no longer existed. Their homeworld was now a mining colony. Their culture preserved only in council archives. Elder Crix of the Vermani rose from his platform. His people were small and quick, with large, dark eyes that missed nothing. They served as the council's intelligence gatherers, watching and recording everything that happened across the galaxy. Perhaps they do not understand, Crix suggested. They are young. Their civilization is barely 300 years old by galactic standards. We should send another delegation. Explain more clearly what they stand to gain and what they stand to lose, added Representative Thal of the Sindari Collective. He was Velkorath's superior and the failure of the mission had embarrassed him. We should send warships with the next delegation. Let them see what they face if they continue to resist. The council debated for 7 days. In the end, they agreed on a compromise. A second delegation would be sent, accompanied by a military escort. The humans would be given one more chance to accept the treaty. If they refused again, containment protocols would be activated. The delegation departed 3 weeks later. 12 diplomatic vessels traveled alongside 48 warships. Their hulls gleamed Ween stars and arrived at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Kevin Harris was waiting for them. He commanded the newly formed Outer Defense Fleet from the bridge of the battleship Defiance. The ship was humanity's largest and most powerful. Built in secret over the past 2 years using technologies reverse-engineered from captured alien probes, it was not as elegant as the Council vessels, but it was strong. Captain Megan Torres stood beside Harris as the Council fleet emerged from hyperspace. She counted the ships quickly, her mind calculating the odds. 48 warships, she reported, plus 12 diplomatic vessels. They brought more firepower this time. Harris nodded slowly. He had expected this. The Council did not accept rejection gracefully. They would push harder, demand more, threaten louder. It was what empires did when someone dared to say no. Open a channel, he ordered. The Council envoy who appeared on the screen was not Velkoroth. This was a Sindari military commander, his silver scales marked with the patterns that indicated high rank. His name was Vershal, and he had crushed rebellions on 17 worlds. I am Commander Vershal of the Sindari Collective, he announced. I speak with the full authority of the Galactic Council. You have one opportunity to accept the Standard Integration Treaty. If you refuse, your system will be declared a containment zone. All contact with the galactic community will be forbidden. Any attempt to leave your system will be met with lethal force. Admiral Harris listened without expression. He had faced threats before, from enemies both human and otherwise. Words did not frighten him. We received your treaty, he said calmly. We read every word, and we reject it completely. We will not surrender our resources. We will not disarm our ships. We will not accept monitors on our world. If that means isolation, we accept isolation. If that means war, we accept war. Vershal, scales rippled with anger. You do not understand what you are saying. The Council commands fleets beyond counting. We have destroyed species far more powerful than yours. You are nothing but primitives playing with toys you do not understand. Captain Torres stepped forward. Her voice was steady and cold. We understand perfectly. You want slaves, not allies. You want subjects, not partners. And you expect us to bow down because you have bigger ships and older civilizations? She paused, letting her words sink in. But we did not survive everything we survived just to become servants. We are humanity. We would rather die free than live in chains. The transmission ended. The Council fleet hung in space for 3 long hours, waiting. Then, slowly, they turned and retreated toward the system's edge. They would establish a blockade and wait for further orders. Back on the Council homeworld, panic began to spread. The Vermani Intelligence Division had been studying humanity since Velkoroth's first report. They had accessed every transmission, every historical record, every piece of data they could find. What they discovered disturbed them deeply. Elder Crix presented the findings to an emergency council session. They call themselves humanity, he began. They have existed for approximately 300,000 years, though their technological civilization is much younger. In that time, they have survived events that would have destroyed most species. He activated a display showing images from human history. Ice ages that covered their world in frozen death. Plagues that killed half their population. Wars fought with weapons that could burn cities to ash. They have fought each other constantly, Crix continued. Great conflicts that killed millions, sometimes hundreds of millions. And yet, they survived. They rebuilt. They grew stronger. Representative Thal dismissed the information with a wave of his hand. So they are violent. So they fight among themselves. This makes them dangerous to each other not to us. You do not understand, Crick said quietly. They did not merely survive these disasters. They learned from them. Each catastrophe made them more adaptable, more resilient, more determined. They have a concept called total war. When their survival is threatened, they do not negotiate. They do not compromise. They fight with everything they have, holding nothing back, until either they win or they are completely destroyed. The chamber fell silent. They are not like other species, Crix concluded. They do not fear death the way we do. They do not calculate odds and accept defeat when the numbers are against them. They fight even when victory seems impossible, especially when victory seems impossible. That is when they become most dangerous. High Chancellor Marathene absorbed this information slowly. In 12,000 years, he had seen many species. Some were peaceful, some were warlike, some were clever, some were strong. But he had never encountered a species quite like this one. What do you recommend? He asked. Crix hesitated. I recommend caution. I recommend that we study them further before taking action. I recommend that we do not underestimate them. But the council was not known for caution. The Sindari demanded action. The Krell wanted to make an example of these upstart primitives. The Morith wanted to demonstrate that the council's authority could not be challenged. In the end, the vote was clear. Containment protocols would be activated. A blockade would seal the Sol system. And if the humans tried to break free, they would learn the true cost of defying the Galactic Council. It was a decision that would change everything. But the Council did not know that yet. They still believed they were in control. They were wrong. The blockade formed slowly, like a net drawing tight around a struggling fish. 300 Council warships took positions at the edge of the Sol system, their weapons pointed inward, their sensors watching for any sign of movement. They came from 6 different species, united in their purpose, to seal humanity away from the rest of the galaxy until they learned to obey. Admiral Verschall commanded the blockade from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He had crushed rebellions before. He knew how this would end. The humans would rage and threaten for a few months, perhaps a few years. Then hunger would set in. Their economy would crumble without access to galactic trade. Their people would grow desperate. And eventually, inevitably, they would beg for mercy. That was how it always worked. For 6 months, nothing happened. No ships tried to break through the blockade. No transmissions left the Sol system. The humans had gone completely silent. Verschall was pleased. He reported to the Council that containment was proceeding as expected. The primitives were learning their place. Soon they would surrender. And this embarrassing episode would be forgotten. He was wrong about everything, deep inside the Sol system. Humanity was not cowering. They were building. Lieutenant Commander Christopher Lane coordinated the effort from a command center buried beneath the surface of Mars. He was young for such responsibility. Only 34 years old, but he had a gift for logistics that bordered on genius. His job was simple: turn every factory, every mine, every shipyard in the solar system toward a single purpose. War. The factories on Earth worked around the clock. Robots that had once built cars and appliances now assembled weapons and armor. The great orbital shipyards expanded, new sections growing like metal flowers reaching for the sun. On the moon, massive facilities extracted helium-3 from the lunar soil, fuel for the reactors that would power humanity's new fleet. Mars became a fortress. Underground bunkers spread across the red planet, connected by tunnels that could shelter millions. The asteroid belt was stripped of resources. Automated mining ships working without rest, feeding raw materials to the hungry factories, and in secret laboratories scattered across the system. Scientists worked on weapons the Council had never seen. Dr. Elizabeth Murray led the Weapons Research Division. She was 60 years old, with white hair and steady hands that had built some of humanity's most dangerous technologies. The climate wars had been fought with weapons she designed. Now she turned her talents toward a different enemy. The Council ships are powerful, she told Admiral Daniel Brooks during one of their regular meetings, but they are also predictable. They have been fighting the same way for thousands of years. They have never faced an enemy who thinks like we do. She showed him the designs for the new weapons. Missile swarms that could overwhelm defensive systems through sheer numbers. Energy weapons that fired in patterns no Council computer could predict. Stealth coatings that made ships nearly invisible to sensors. "They expect us to fight like everyone else they have conquered," Murray said. "We will not." Admiral Brooks approved every project she proposed. Resources flowed to the weapons division without limit. Humanity was betting everything on this one chance. 6 months after the blockade began, Admiral Samantha Wells took command of the newly formed strike fleet. She was 41 years old. With red hair cut short and a reputation for aggressive tactics that had won 3 major engagements during the unification conflicts, she had never lost a battle. Her flagship was the carrier Thunderbolt, a massive vessel that held 200 fighter craft and enough firepower to devastate a small moon. Around her gathered the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, 2,000 ships built in secret. Armed with weapons the Council could not imagine, the fleet gathered behind Jupiter. Hidden from Council sensors by the giant planet's massive bulk, they waited in silence, running final checks, preparing for what. Anders through a secure channel. "The Council thinks we are broken," she said. "They think we are hiding, afraid, waiting to surrender. They are wrong. We have spent 6 months preparing for this moment. Now we show them what humanity can do when we are pushed against a wall." Fleet moved. They came around Jupiter like a wave of steel and fire, engines burning bright, weapons hot. 2,000 ships screaming toward the blockade at speeds the Council had never seen from vessels that size. Admiral Verschall received the alert on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. His first reaction was disbelief. His sensors showed an impossible number of contacts, far more than any primitive species should have been able to build in such a short time. His second reaction was anger. How dare these creatures challenge the Council's authority? His third reaction, as the human fleet grew closer and he saw the weapons they carried, was fear. "All ships, defensive formation," he ordered. "Target the largest vessels first. Destroy their command structure, and the rest will fall." It was standard Council tactics tested over thousands of years. It had worked against every enemy it had ever faced. It did not work against humanity. The human ships did not form into neat battle lines. They scattered individual vessels and small groups, attacking from every direction at once. They did not target the strongest Council ships first. They went after the sensors, the communications arrays, the command links that held the fleet together. Within the first hour, Verschall lost contact with a third of his ships. They were not destroyed, just cut off, blinded, unable to coordinate. His beautiful formation dissolved into chaos. Commander Angela Price led a squadron of fast attack ships directly into the heart of the Council formation. Her vessels were small, barely a tenth the size of a Council cruiser, but they were fast and they were deadly. They slipped past defensive fire, launched their missiles at point-blank range, and vanished before the Council gunners could target them. "Hit and run," Price told her pilots. "Never stay in one place. Never give them a clean shot. Make them chase us, and while they are chasing, let the big ships tear them apart." The battle lasted 11 hours. When it finally ended, the Council blockade was broken. 187 Council ships had been destroyed or disabled. The rest fled toward the nearest relay station, their formation shattered, their confidence destroyed. Humanity had lost 43 ships. Over 2,000 crew members had died. But they had won. Admiral Wells stood on the bridge of the Thunderbolt as the last. Council vessels disappeared from her sensors. She felt no joy, no triumph. Only a grim satisfaction that they had proven what humanity could do. "Send a message to Earth," she ordered. "Tell them the blockade is broken. Tell them we are free." The message traveled across the solar system, reaching every colony, every station, every ship. For a moment, a brief moment, there was celebration. But Admiral Brooks quickly reminded everyone of the truth. This was just the first battle, he told the United Earth Assembly. They will come back with more ships, more weapons, more determination. We have won nothing yet. We have only proven that we can fight. He was right. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the survivors of the blockade carried news of their defeat to the Council homeworld. And in the great chamber where the galaxy's fate was decided, panic was beginning to spread. The humans had done the impossible. They had fought back and won, and that changed everything. The news of the blockade's destruction spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within days, every species in Council space had heard the story. A primitive race from a small yellow star had defeated 300 Council warships. The mighty Galactic Council, rulers of 1,000,000 systems, had been humiliated by creatures who had only discovered space travel 2 centuries ago in the Great Council Chamber. Chaos reigned. High Chancellor Marathon stood at the center of the storm, watching as the 17 elder species turned against each other. Unity that had lasted 12,000 years was cracking before his ancient eyes. Representative Thal of the Sindari Collective demanded immediate revenge. His people had lost 73 ships in the battle. Their finest admiral had fled in disgrace. The honor of the Sindari required blood. We must gather every fleet in Council space, Thal declared. We must descend upon this soul system with such overwhelming force that nothing survives. Let this be a lesson to any who would challenge our authority. Elder Crix of the Vermani disagreed. His intelligence division had been analyzing the battle, studying the tactics the humans had used. What they found troubled him deeply. Force alone will not defeat them, Crix said. They do not fight like other species. They adapt, they improvise, they sacrifice themselves without hesitation. Our analysts believe that direct confrontation plays to their strengths. Then what do you suggest? Thal demanded. That we do nothing? That we let these primitives mock us? I suggest that we study them further. I suggest that we find their weaknesses before we commit more ships to destruction. The argument continued for days. Representatives shouted at each other across the vast chamber. Ancient alliances strained under the pressure. For the first time in millennia, the Council could not agree on a course of action, and while they argued, something unexpected happened. 3 minor Council species quietly withdrew their support for military action against humanity. The Telmari, the Kresh, and the Voldani had all been watching the situation carefully. They were old species, older even than the Sindari, but they had never held much power in the Council. They had accepted integration thousands of years ago because they had no choice, but they had never forgotten what it felt like to be free. The Battle of the Outer Reach had awakened something in them. They saw in humanity a reflection of their own ancestors, proud and defiant, refusing to bow no matter the cost. And they began to wonder if perhaps the Council was not as invincible as they had believed. Captain Nathan Price discovered this when he led a small diplomatic vessel to the Telmari homeworld. The journey was dangerous. The route passed through Council-controlled space, and any Council patrol would have destroyed his ship on sight. But Admiral Brooks believed the risk was necessary. Humanity needed allies. The Telmari were reptilian, their scales a deep green that shimmered in the light of their red sun. They had once been warriors, fierce and proud, but centuries of Council rule had dulled their fire. When Captain Price landed on their world, he found a species that had forgotten how to fight. Elder Seshk received him in a chamber decorated with ancient weapons, relics of a time when the Telmari had ruled their own destiny. The old reptiles studied the human with curious eyes. "You're smaller than I expected," Sesh said. "Our reports described you as giants who breathed fire and ate starships for breakfast." Price smiled. "We are just people. We bleed. We die. But we do not surrender." "Why do you fight the Council?" Sesh gasped. "Integration brings peace, resources, protection. Many species have prospered under Council rule. And how many species have disappeared under Council rule?" Price replied. "How many cultures have been erased? How many peoples have been reduced to servants, their history forgotten, their identity destroyed?" Seshk was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with old memories. "We were warriors once," he said. "We conquered our star system through strength and courage. When the Council came, we fought them for 300 years. We lost billions of our people. In the end, we accepted integration because we had no choice. But we never forgot who we were. Price leaned forward. Then help us. Stand with us against the Council. Show the galaxy that their rule is not inevitable, that freedom is still possible. Sesh shook his head slowly. We cannot fight. We do not have the ships or the weapons. Our warriors died long ago. You do not need to fight, Price said. Not yet. Just share information. Tell us what you know about the Council's plans, their weaknesses, their secrets. And when the time comes, when the Council's grip begins to slip, stand up and say no. The old Telmari considered this. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he rose from his seat and walked to the wall where the ancient weapons hung. He took down a blade, its edge still sharp after thousands of years. My grandfather carried this sword against the Council, Sesh said. He died holding it, refusing to surrender. I have kept it all these years, waiting for something. I did not know what. Perhaps I was waiting for this. He handed the sword to Price. Take this to your people. Tell them that the Telmari remember what freedom meant, and tell them that the Council is planning something. 12 fleets from 6 species will converge on your system in 30 days. They mean to destroy you completely. Price took the sword with steady hands. Thank you. We will not forget this. Survive first, Sesh replied. Remember later. The information Captain Price brought back changed everything. Humanity now had a timeline. 30 days to prepare for the largest military assault in galactic history. 30 days to turn their solar system into a fortress. Admiral Brooks called an emergency meeting of the entire military command. Every admiral, every general, every ship captain received the same briefing. The Council was coming with everything they had. Over 4,000 ships from 6 species, more firepower than humanity had ever faced. Have enough ships or enough weapons. But we do not need to win a straight fight. We need to make them pay such a high price for victory that they decide we are not worth the cost. Admiral Samantha Wells outlined the defensive plan. Every asteroid in the belt would be turned into a weapon. Every moon would become a fortress. The space between Earth and Mars would be filled with mines, traps, and automated weapons platforms. The Council fleet would have to fight for every kilometer. They think they are coming to crush us, Wells said. We are going to show them that crushing humanity is harder than they ever imagined. Back in the Council chamber, the vote finally came. Despite the objections of the Vermini and the silent withdrawal of the 3 minor species, the majority demanded war. The combined fleets would assemble. The humans would be destroyed. An order would be restored to the galaxy. High Chancellor Marathony watched the vote with tired eyes. He had lived for thousands of years. He had seen empires rise and fall, and somewhere deep in his ancient mind, he wondered if this might be the beginning of the end, not for humanity. For the Council, but he said nothing. The vote was final. The fleets would march, and in 30 days, the galaxy would learn whether humanity's defiance was courage or madness. The Council Armada arrived exactly when the Telmari had predicted. Over 4,000 warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, their hulls gleaming with weapons that could crack planets. They came from 6 species, united in their determination to crush this upstart race that had dared to challenge Galactic. Order High Chancellor Marathene himself commanded. The fleet from the bridge of the Council flagship, glory of ages. He had not led military operation in over 3,000 years. But this moment was too important to trust to subordinates. The entire galaxy was watching. The Council's authority depended on total victory. Broadcast on all frequencies, he ordered. Give them one final chance to surrender. His voice carried across the void, translated into every human language. This is High Chancellor Marathony of the Galactic Council. You have defied our authority. You have rejected our peace. You have destroyed our ships. This is your final opportunity. Surrender now. Accept integration, and your species will be spared. Refuse, and you will be erased from history. Every trace of your existence will be destroyed. Your worlds will be sterilized. Your name will be forgotten. Choose. On the bridge of the carrier Resilience, Admiral Samantha Wells listened to the ultimatum with cold eyes. She had spent 30 days preparing for this moment. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier under her command knew what was at stake. She activated her own broadcast. I am Admiral Samantha Wells of the United Earth Fleet. I speak for humanity, and this is our answer. She paused, letting the silence stretch across the stars. We are humanity. We crawled out of caves and learned to master fire. We survived ice ages that buried our world in frozen death. We survived plagues that killed half our people. We survived wars that burned our cities and poisoned our land. We survived ourselves when we nearly destroyed everything we had built. And we rebuilt. We always rebuild. Her voice grew harder. You think your armada frightens us? We were born frightened. We grew up fighting. Every generation of our species has faced extinction and refused to accept it. You are not special. You are just the latest threat, and we will survive you too. She leaned forward, her words carrying the weight of all human history. We will die free before we live as subjects. Attack if you dare. We are ready. The transmission ended. The battle began. The Council Armada advanced in perfect formation, thousands of ships moving as one. Their tactics were precise, mathematical, perfected over millennia of warfare. They expected the human fleet to meet them in traditional battle, ship against ship, strength against strength. Humanity did not cooperate. The first wave of attacks came from the asteroid belt. Thousands of rocks, some barely larger than houses, some as big as mountains, came screaming toward the Council fleet. Each one had been fitted with engines and packed with explosives. They were not guided by computers. They were guided by human pilots who knew they would not survive. Commander Jason Cole led the first wave. His ship was a converted mining vessel, ugly and slow, but it carried enough explosives to destroy a battleship. He aimed directly for the heart of the Council formation. Remember what we are fighting for, he told his squadron. Remember everyone back home. Make it count. 47 human pilots died in the first wave. They took 212 Council ships with them. The Council fleet scattered, trying to avoid the suicidal attacks. Their formation broke. Their coordination collapsed. And into that chaos came the human strike fleet. Admiral Wells led the assault personally. The Resilience and her escorts tore through gaps in the Council line, their weapons firing in patterns no Council computer could predict. They struck at command ships, communication relays, sensor arrays. They blinded the enemy and then vanished before retaliation could come. Lieutenant. Commander Amy Chen commanded a squadron of fast attack ships. Her pilots were young, barely out of training, but they fought like veterans. They used the debris from destroyed ships as cover, hiding among the wreckage, striking from unexpected angles. Stay together, Chen told her pilots. Watch each other's backs. Hit them and run. Never give them a clean shot. The battle raged for hours. The Council had more ships, more firepower, more experience, but humanity had something else. They had desperation. They had determination. They had the knowledge that defeat meant extinction. High Chancellor Marathine watched his fleet being torn apart and could not understand what was happening. His ships outnumbered the humans 3-1. His weapons were more powerful. His commanders were more experienced. By every logical measure, he should be winning. But logic did not account for human stubbornness. It did not account for pilots who flew their damaged ships directly into enemy vessels rather than retreat. It did not account for soldiers who fought on with broken bodies and failing systems. Refusing to die until they had taken one more enemy with them, Captain? Maria Santos commanded a destroyer that had lost half its weapons and most of its crew. Her ship was dying around her, but she refused to withdraw. Instead, she aimed her crippled vessel at a Council cruiser and accelerated to maximum speed. All hands abandon ship, she ordered. That's an order. I can handle this alone. Her crew refused to leave. 27 men and women stayed at their posts as the destroyer slammed into the Council cruiser, destroying both ships in a flash of fire and metal. Such sacrifices happened again and again across the battlefield. Every human death cost the Council dearly, and slowly, inevitably, the Councils will begin to break. After 72 hours of continuous combat, the Council armada retreated. They did not fall back in good order. They fled, their formations shattered, their confidence destroyed. Ships that had fought together for centuries now raced each other toward the safety of hyperspace, abandoning their wounded, abandoning their dead. High Chancellor Marathan was among the last to leave. He stood on the bridge of the glory of ages, watching the impossible defeat unfold around him. In 3,000 years of life, he had never imagined such a moment. He whispered, "How did they do this?" No one could answer him. There was no answer that made sense. Back in the Sol system, there was no celebration. The human fleet had won, but the cost had been terrible. Over 500 ships destroyed, nearly 40,000 men and women dead, entire families wiped out. The victory was paid for in blood and grief. Admiral Brooks stood before the United Earth Assembly and delivered his report. His voice was steady, but his eyes showed the weight of what had been lost. "We have won this battle," he said, "but we have not won the war. The Council still exists. They still have fleets and resources beyond our imagination. They will lick their wounds, and they will return. Perhaps not tomorrow. Perhaps not next year. But they will come back." He paused, looking out at the assembled representatives of humanity. "But they have learned something today. They have learned that we cannot be conquered easily. They have learned that the price of our submission is higher than they are willing to pay. And that changes everything." 6 months after the battle, the first non-Council species arrived at Earth. The Telmari came first. Their ships carrying diplomats and scholars eager to learn from the species that had done the impossible. The Kresh followed, and then the Voldani, and then others. Species that had lived under Council rule for millennia came, seeking alliance with humanity. Admiral Wells welcomed them personally. "We are not conquerors," she told them. "We do not want to replace one empire with another. But we will stand with anyone who values freedom. Anyone who refuses to bow." The Galactic Council watched these developments with growing alarm. Their grip on the galaxy, once absolute, was slipping. Other species were beginning to question, beginning to wonder, beginning to hope, and at the center of it all stood humanity. The species they had dismissed as primitive, the species they had tried to contain, the species that had rejected their diplomacy and forged something new. The Council had panicked. The Council had faltered. The Council had learned, too late, that some species cannot be conquered. Humanity had